In this video, we're going to talk about septic systems and poop. Hi, I'm Ginger Walker, the team lead of Give Back team of Coldwell Banker Elite, and welcome to this episode of Give, Work, Play, where we talk about everything living and giving in Northern Virginia. It's not every day that people get excited about talking about poop. But you know what? There's really not that much information that's out there for buyers buying a home with a septic system. So in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about what that means to you as a buyer. So in full disclosure, I'm not a septicologist or a poopologist. I am a realtor. So I do defer to those experts, but I hope that this video gives you some top line information to prepare you if you're thinking about buying a home that has a septic system. As you're a septicologist for the day, I figured we'd start with some basic information of Septic Systems 101. 1/4 of homes across the U.S. actually have a septic system. And here's a really random fact that you can pull out for your next cocktail party and act like you know what you're talking about. In the state of Vermont, I know I'm not in Vermont, I'm in Virginia, but in the state of Vermont, 55% of the homes actually have a septic system. So let's talk about what that actually is. So basically a septic system is a way to get waste from the house to outside in your yard. Yeah. In the yard. So that means the house is not hooked up to any public utilities for waste disposal. So what does that mean? Well, it's a way of getting the waste from the house into a tank and from the tank into the yard. Or it's away from getting the waste from the house into a series of tanks, which isn't then going out into the yard. I know it's a lot to talk about and it's a little confusing, so I'm going to break it down in bite-sized pieces. So there's conventional systems and there's alternative systems. So let me explain what the difference is between the two. In the 40s, conventional systems are what we started seeing in the Northern Virginia area. And typically this septic system has a pipe that goes from the house to a tank. That tank actually is where the ick goes to the bottom, and the water, or I don't even know what they call it. It's like the fluid. So then it goes to a distribution box, or it's otherwise known as the D box. And the D box, the cool thing about that is there's one pipe going in, but there's several that go out. And those are where the water or the fluid go, and they go out into the yard. So the cool thing about that, kind of, or maybe it's gross, I'm not really sure, but in the month of August in the Northern Virginia area, when it's really hot here, that's probably going to be the greenest grass you're going to find. So you're going to see exactly where those lines are for the leach field on your property. Now here's some key tips that you might want to know if you do have a conventional system. So roots from trees, where do they go, especially when it's hot and dry out? They look for water. So one of the biggest things that I've found in all of the homes I've sold in the area that have conventional systems, the damage is caused by tree roots. So tree roots are going to kind of weave their way to that distribution box, and they might like tip the lid or break the lid open, or they can even get out into that leach field and destroy some of those tubes that are taking that fluid out into the yard. So the key things that you want to know is make sure that you keep the entire area of where the septic field is free of trees and free of roots. So you don't want to be planting any of your trees or garden in that area. So what it would be is probably just a really nice big green open field. Now one of the other things that you want to know about this type of system is you don't want to put anything heavy on it. So you want to make sure you know where it is and you're not driving heavy machinery across it or putting any kind of structure on it either, because what could happen, you could probably crush and damage the system itself. So a conventional system is a great system to have, but you really just need to know where it is and how to maintain it. Some of the other key things about conventional systems, and probably all systems that are like this or even alternative, is there's certain things that you don't want to put down into the system from your house. And no, I'm not talking about toilet paper, although there's special toilet paper for septic systems. I'm talking about things like eggshells and coffee grinds, and I don't know, you could probably Google all about what not to put into your system, but just know that you want to make sure that you're treating the system well, because the last thing that you want to hear is the septic alarm going off at 3 a.m. when it's starting to back up into your house. Your local state or county is most likely going to tell you when you have to pump that tank out, but you can also get on some kind of a maintenance program where they might come and pump it out for you on a regular basis. I also would be careful how many people are living on a full-time basis in the house, because that's going to obviously impact how much is sitting in that tank. So you really want to know what you're getting into when you're buying a conventional system house, but know that in the Northern Virginia area, they're actually quite typical. All right, so let's flip the script a little bit and talk about alternative systems. And again, I am not a licensed septic inspector. However, I have been through many of these these different types of transactions with all different types of septic systems. And with the alternative system, there's actually several different types. So I'm just going to give you the highlights of just some of them. So 2 reasons why a house might not have a conventional system and have the alternative system is because they couldn't find 3 feet of good soil for the traditional or conventional system. The other reason might be because they didn't have enough space to be able to put the system in. Because remember, with the conventional system, it does have that leach field, which does take up and require a lot of room. So let's talk briefly about some of the alternative systems. This is kind of a cool one, and I never really knew about this until probably about 5 or 6 years ago in our area. But there's a system that actually takes peat moss. I know, peat moss. And that's actually what is used for the filtration system. And there's 2 different places that the peat moss comes from, and there's 2 different types of systems that use each one. So one of the peat moss systems comes from Ireland. How cool is that? But it's also a little expensive if you need to replace it. And that system is called a PuraFlow system, and it uses the peat moss to filter the matter. The second peat moss system, the peat moss comes from Canada. I know, everyone's taking an overseas trip just to get here for your system. This system is called the EcoFlow system, and it works similarly to the Puriform system. They're using peat moss to actually do the filtration. Now, how you know what this system looks like on the outside of the house? Typically, you're going to see several green boxes. They don't always have to be green, all in a row, and it's usually kind of mounded around it. That is the indication for us as agents and you as a possible buyer that might be an alternative system. And going back to the example of a 4-bedroom house, what might you see on the outside? You're probably going to see 5 pods. So that's how you know it's probably a 4-bedroom home. Another alternative system is called ATU, which stands for Aerobic Treatment Unit. It's another natural system similar to conventional systems. The difference is that they use a natural process, unlike traditional conventional systems. And they also use oxygen to break down the organic matter, more similar to what we use in the municipal waste systems. There's also a system that uses bubbles. I know, that kind of sounds fun to me. I just kind of picture bubbles, blowing bubbles up in the air. But this system, it's a microfast system, that's what they call it, and it uses bubbles to treat the wastewater, and it has an exposed blower that's up above the ground. So typically when we're looking for an alternative system and we see this round piece that comes up above the ground, that's usually the blower next to another piece of the system above the ground. So when we see the blower, that kind of gives us the indication that might be a microfast system. I know they've got all kinds of really cool things and ways of managing the waste. So there's plenty of other systems and alternative systems and different ways that you could get rid of the waste from the house if you're not on the municipal system. And I can't talk about all of them right here, but typical for our area here in Northern Virginia, those are the more common ones that we tend to see. So what I would encourage you to do, no matter where you're buying a home, if it does have a septic system, you definitely want to learn more about it. And if it doesn't have an alarm on it, which I mentioned before, you may want to consider seeing if that's an option to add later on after you own the home. Because I will tell you, it is really nice to know if there is a problem, that alarm might go off and save you from a bigger problem later. So when buying a house with a septic system, what do we typically ask for? Well, an inspection on the system itself. So they'll go and do a full walkover of the unit, check the pump, and also we ask for it to be pumped out. Now that might be different in other areas, but the typical cost for this type of inspection is anywhere usually from about $500 to $850 more or less. And then if there's any problems or deficiencies with the actual system itself, that's the opportunity to ask to make sure that the seller fixes it and it's in full working order when you get the keys to your new home. And getting it pumped out is kind of nice, so you know it's completely empty and ready for your use. And just as a side note, in Stafford County, for example, we're required to pump it out every 5 years. So the county will actually send a letter, and I get the letter, and I then have to pump it out, and then I have to show them that the tank has actually been pumped out. So most areas are going to require some level of maintenance and pumping out to make sure that the system is working properly, because they wouldn't want any kind of public hazard as a result of non-maintenance. So you might want to check, no matter where you're buying the house, what is the requirement by the state or the county that you live in to maintain the system itself. And some systems, alternative systems typically, usually come with a maintenance contract. So you're going to want to investigate what the maintenance contract is, how much it is, and how often they actually come and maintain the system for you. So what are the pros and what are the cons of having a septic system, regardless of what type it is? Well, one of the pros is that you don't have to pay for the public sewer system. So really, you're keeping everything on your own property for the most part, and it's essentially free outside of that maintenance that I just mentioned. And what happens with a septic system? Well, it's allowing you to live on acreage because you're not going to have a septic system typically on a smaller piece of property. And how long can a septic tank last? Well, it does depend on how you've maintained it or the person before you, but some of them can last up to 40 years. It's kind of a long time, but you do want to make sure again that you're maintaining the system. The better you maintain it, the longer you're probably going to have that system working properly for you. And one of the other things that a septic tank can do is it may save you money on your property taxes since your property isn't hooked up to the city sewer system. Now, what are some of the cons of having a septic system? Well, you could have it back up into your house, and you do have to maintain it. So you want to make sure whatever the requirements are for maintaining the system properly, that you do that. And one of the other things that I did mention earlier in the video is you have to be careful what you're putting into the septic tank. So things like coffee grinds or baby diapers or wipes, for example, are not usually septic friendly. So whatever you're putting into that system, make sure that you're aware whether or not it's going to cause a problem, a clog, or a backup in the future because you're putting something in the system that the system can't handle. And for this system, if it's not properly maintained and you do have a problem, it could be expensive to make that repair. So again, you want to make sure that the maintenance is being done on the system, and if you're buying one with whatever system it is, that you do have it fully inspected and that you have that tank pumped out so you know that you're starting off with a system that's in good shape to begin with, because if there's a problem, it could be expensive. Again, I'm not a poopologist, I'm not a septic inspector, so take this information and then maybe Google what's appropriate for the house that you're looking to buy so that you can become educated in what the system entails. I'm Ginger Walker, the team lead of Give Back Team with Coldwell Banker Elite. I hope you found this video helpful, and definitely if you have any questions about septic systems, contact a local septic inspector or feel free to drop a comment below. Thanks so much for watching.